It's true, there is no specific vocabulary section in TOEFL, but having strong vocabulary does help with all of the other sections. I mean, that's obvious. It's a no-brainer. In terms of the reading section, it does help you understand the text, but there is also a vocabulary question in the reading section. In terms of listening, I mean, you just understand what's going on. So, yeah. So in this video, we're going to talk about your vocabulary and how to make sure your personal vocabulary is ready for TOEFL. First, obviously, aside from just general English, you need academic vocabulary. And inside of this big category, there are two small ones. The first one is, actual academic vocabulary, like things you need to know in order to understand, academic writing and scholarly texts and lectures and all of that stuff. Off the top of my head right now, words like acquire, crucial, significant, acclaim, stuff like that. More elevated language that is commonly used in those academic materials. And then the second subcategory is school-related vocabulary, because you are going to need that in the listening part and just in general, right? Because you will encounter things like the student wants to transfer to a different program. They don't have enough credits. What are credits, right? Or the requirements for the program, they need to this, and this, right? Whatever the case may be. But what I'm talking about is vocabulary specific to, education or getting education in the US. What GPA is, what, prerequisites are, just all of that stuff. And I would say that falls under the umbrella of academic vocabulary. Now, of course, there are transition words. That's the second category. Those are very helpful for you to understand what's going on in the relationship between different parts of the text and reading and listening and stuff like that. But it also helps you produce and generate the language when you do speaking and writing, because you can make your idea flow in a very nice way. Stuff like besides, such as, however, consequently, and all of that stuff. And then the third category is the least important one, in my opinion. It is somewhat important, but not very. And that's subject-specific vocabulary. And I'm only saying that because you don't want stuff to catch you off guard, and you just want to be aware that obviously you will hear that a lot. So what I'm talking about is, let's say, the listening portion, right? You are going to hear a lecture. In this lecture, the professor will explain a concept, right? So, all right, now this concept is obviously a classroom situation. So it will be a lecture about, biology, literature, business, art, whatever. And those terms will be thrown around. Now, you don't have to learn all of it because the main term and all of that stuff, they will show it to you on the screen, and they will also teach it to you because it's a lecture on this thing. So it's not necessarily the most important thing for you to be ready for, but you just need to be aware and understand that this is what's going to happen, and just don't panic. So maybe you don't need to memorize and acquire all of this vocabulary, but it's cool to maybe read stuff about it every now and again, and you can be like, oh, I've seen this word before. I don't remember what it means, but I've seen it at least. It just gives you a little sense of comfort, and you really need that. So here are 5 tips to improve your vocabulary to the appropriate level so you can really do well on TOEFL. Tip number 1, make sure you read and listen a lot. Simply memorizing vocabulary lists is not super effective. It's great to do that, but it can't be the only thing that you're doing or the main activity. It's supplemental, or it's a part of a bigger sort of picture. But when you read and listen to relevant source materials, you will hear those words and you will see those words used in context over and over again. And seeing those words in action will help you develop a deeper understanding of how this word functions and what it actually means and why we need it. And you can really read a lot of different stuff and listen, like academic journals, articles, books, podcasts, the news, lectures, anything really. I've given lists of some useful resources in my previous videos, so go check that out. And as you do this, as you listen and read and you come across new vocabulary and new words, just write them down write down the meaning, and write down the whole sentence it comes in, and try to understand why it's being used. I actually teach you how to understand meaning from context in my How to Score Over 100 on TOEFL Without Trying Too Hard online course. In this course, I guide you through this whole thing, and we learn some tips and tricks and strategies on how to succeed at TOEFL. I analyze question types in all 4 sections and tell you and show you how to complete each of them. You will master all the necessary skills you need to get a good score, but also it doesn't mean that you're taking a break from learning English, because English is much bigger than TOEFL. So the same things I teach you for this exam will also be useful in real life. You will have a lot of practice opportunities and, assignments that I give you, and you will get the most out of this course. You will also get printable handouts and templates for speaking and writing sections in order to succeed. I give you all of the useful vocabulary as well. I mean, it's just a great course overall. And I'm not just saying it because it's mine. I really, really love it. Tip number 2. Double down on synonyms. I mean, it's just a useful skill in general in life. Every English speaker, not just learner, but speaker. If you're a learner, you're a speaker too. All of us. This is a skill that we really need to pay attention to and nurture it, because this skill gives you confidence. And this skill is essentially responsible for how you feel about your own English. So if you're able to talk about the same thing in many different ways, that's what a good speaker is. So whenever you discover a new word or you're learning vocabulary, just, always try to find the synonyms and see what looks familiar, see what you maybe have seen or heard before, and just write that down as well. Because those words do tend to have slightly different tone and different nuance. For example, take is just take. Take is very, very general. Anything could be take. But then receive is a little more specific. Oh yeah, borrow is a little more specific as well. Acquire is a different thing, but still similar to take. So I'm gonna link some resources for that type of stuff in the description box down below. Make sure you check that out. Being aware of synonyms helps you with paraphrasing, and it's something that you need to do quite a bit during TOEFL. So here are some ideas for you. And is great, but you can also say in addition, moreover, likewise, additionally, also, to add up, furthermore, besides, right? But is also great, but how about however, although, in contrast, nevertheless, despite that, nonetheless, on the other hand, as a result. That's also a very popular one, but maybe you don't want to say it 100 times. Maybe you want to say therefore sometimes, or thus, or hence, or maybe consequently, hereby, subsequently, due to something, right? There are many ways to do this, and this list that I gave you just now, I think is a great list for your transition words as well. Let me give you another one. Tell, very popular, tell. Well, you can state, you can assert, you can claim, you can present, you can point out, note, indicate, draw attention to, notice, mention, or here's a massive list that I'm about to give you, and it took me a while to put it together, but I think it's very useful. When it comes to speaking question 1, which is an opinion type of question, we are tempted to say I think, which is great. But here are some alternatives for you. So first version of I think is you are very sure. I'm absolutely convinced that, quite frankly, without a shadow of doubt, it's obvious that. Be a little careful with this one, because you don't want to state a fact and then say that it's obvious. You want to give a personal example and then say it's obvious in the context of your opinion and your example, but you don't want to generalize and say it's obvious that everybody knows blah, blah, blah. So be careful with this specific one. I'm certain that, that's a great one. I'm absolutely sure that, it's clear to me that, or you can say I'm positive that. Now these are very cool, very professional and nice and very sure. Now, these ones, the next list is a little more polite because it's a little less sure. So these ones are a little safer, I think. It's always better to be humble and not say that I 100% believe that, blah, 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 right? So as far as I'm concerned, that's the first one. Personally, I feel that, as I see it, from my point of view, the way I see it is, I'm fairly confident that, see, this is good. You're not saying I'm confident or I'm very confident. No, I'm fairly confident. So you make it a little, the word confident is a strong word, but by adding fairly in front of it, you make it a little weaker, which is great. It's humble, it's polite, it's nice, it's educated, it's good. Speaking of that, I do provide very comprehensive and easy to understand templates for your speaking section as well as the writing section, so you know exactly what you need to do and you don't go over time, and you know how to structure your responses and you don't freak out. And all of this stuff is in my online course, How to Score Over 100 on TOEFL Without Trying Too Hard. It's in the name, without trying too hard. Tip number 3, whatever vocabulary learning techniques or methods you use, and if they work for you, use that. You can also try flashcards and just different random exercises to remember the new vocabulary. You can ask ChatGPT to create exercises with the vocabulary. You can use, Quizlet for flashcards and all that stuff. It's a great way to memorize. Now, not everyone is the same, and it doesn't work for everybody, of course. But whatever works for you, find it. And to find it, you need to try everything. But as soon as you find it, just stick with it and double down. Number 4, get into the habit of really looking at the word and thinking about it on a different level, right? From like literally a language perspective. For example, take a look at this right now. So this is your question, right? Coincide. You need to figure out what that means, coincide with. But you don't know this word, right? But if you look at this, right? You know that this prefix, co, means together in, like a collaborative effort, cooperate, co-pilot, like stuff like that. Plus you have with right here. So something together with. So here you can find out what your answer is by just using this logic. I'm not saying it's gonna work 100% of the time, but it's just another strategy for you if you are running out of options. And number 5, create a study plan that you can really stick to, right? Set realistic goals, have timelines. You need to set priorities and really look at the vocabulary that is more frequent first, and also vocabulary that's relevant to TOEFL. Next, avoid overloading with too many words. Overloading with too much vocabulary is just like overeating. You think it's a good idea, but then you regret it immediately. So don't do it. Find out what your limit is by just trial and error. I mean, you've been learning English for a while now. You should have a pretty good idea. Just make sure you don't burn out. If you overeat on vocabulary, you will get sick. Don't get sick. Next, make sure you establish a daily routine. It doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be crazy, but it has to be consistent. So if you have a daily routine, something that you do every day, I mean, you're just setting yourself up for success, 100%. So if you schedule frequent review sessions, it allows you to use, spaced repetition techniques. You revisit the words and you commit them to your long-term memory. And of course, engage in active usage. Vocabulary is best learned in action, not just for TOEFL, for everything. So you don't sit and just look at it, right? You actively try to use it. You try to understand how you can use it, find your own way. The more you touch this word in many different ways, the faster you'll learn it and retain it. So your key vocabulary types here are academic words, transition words, and not super important, but subject-specific terminology. Just be familiar. You don't have to know it. You're not a scientist or whatever. Make sure you read and listen. Make sure you explore synonyms and get familiar with those. Use flashcards. Study the word itself so you can determine what the prefix means. Like re, if it's re, it means do it again. Redo, rewrite, right? Stuff like that. And by incorporating these methods, you can really do well on TOEFL. I truly believe that from my personal experience and my experience working with my students. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this. Good luck, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to check out my online course, how to score over 100 on TOEFL without trying too hard. The link is in the description box down below. If you want me to help you prepare, it will be my pleasure. Check it out. See you in the next one. Bye.